let's start from the beginning and wish you a welcome once again to our second day of CGA Belgrade. Today, as you know, we have an exciting ride through two programs that will run in parallel, and I'm welcoming you on behalf of the CGArts program. Today, we are talking about development of artwork, both character and asset development. And for the end of the day, we have a special presentation on NFTs. And Friday won't be a Friday without a party, so we prepared a very avant-garde experience for you. If you remember or have attended our session in Novi Sad in September, you might have noticed the work of Tanja Vujinović, and we prepared and are happy that our partner for this occasion is Griggs Cultural Center from Slovenia, and they will bring you together with Tanja a dancing experience in VR. So if you have a VR headset at home, you can join through VR chat, just join the platform, or you can simply scroll to the bottom of this page where the live stream from the VR chat will be prepared. So we have a lineup of 4 DJs and also exhibition of Tanya's artwork. And we hope that many of you will join us. Also, I think we are ready to start with our first presentation of the day in the CGArts section. Autodesk, as you know, has been supporting CGA Belgrade since its very inception, and we are very proud on that. Behind the creation of some of these works, we had opportunity to meet many people who are creating the staple softwares of the industry. But this time we are taking a slightly different route, and we are going under the hood of Autodesk artwork created by their in-house artist, Griggs. Lee gets the specific pleasure of testing Arnold, Bifrost, and Maya to create some of the most mesmerizing pieces of digital artwork. He's also very active in creating tutorials and repositories of documents to help you how to get the best creative quality of your render. If you are not familiar with Lee's work, I urge you to subscribe to his YouTube channel or follow his work on Instagram, because Lee will also be today with us in the backstage and will join the chat. So if you already know his work or want to ask anything during the presentation, please do. I see that chat is getting full. So I think we are now ready to roll the presentation, and Lee will be with you with comments.
Hi there, my name's Lee Griggs, and I'm an Arnold Rendering Specialist at Autodesk, where I test, document and create tutorials for the various Arnold plugins, and I've been doing that for around 10 years now. So what is Arnold? Arnold, as it says on the Arnold Renderer website, an advanced Monte Carlo ray tracing renderer built for the demands of feature-length animation and visual effects. So in my day-to-day work at Autodesk, I use all of these 3D software applications: Maya, 3ds Max, Houdini, Cinema 4D, and Katana, for which we have Arnold plugins. And you can see here we have the Arnold Renderer documentation, which I work on. So please, if you have any questions about Arnold, check out the documentation, as I've spent a lot of time on it. We also have the Arnold Answers community site, where you're free to ask questions about any issues you have using Arnold, and I often try to help out there. We also have a YouTube channel where I've been creating Arnold video tutorials for the last year, which I urge you to take a look at. You can find a wide variety of videos about shading, lighting, and rendering with Arnold there. I have a website, leegriggs.com, where I post my various experiments with Arnold. I also link tutorials to any of the work that I do so that you can see how it's done. There's also a link to my blog there, the imaginatively named Arnold Rendering blog, which has been going strong for about 7 years now. And I post a lot of Arnold related links there, such as Arnold tutorials or any cool work done by our customers. So the way I use a computer is a little different to most. I'm a big proponent of multi-touch technology, which I use to create all my work with. It takes a little getting used to, but I've found it to be much faster and more efficient than anything else I've tried. Anyway, you can check out my multi-touch Maya video on YouTube to see how I use it. So I like to collect photos as a source of inspiration, whether it be photography, fine art, sculpture, movies, video games, anything really. And something I definitely recommend to all to artists to find inspiration. It's a great way to inspire and motivate yourself to produce better renders. So I thought I'd show you some photographs that I've found quite interesting, that I've tried to achieve a similar feel in my work. That's kind of macro photography look, heavy depth of field, these small worlds full of millions of objects. I find these micro and macro worlds to be quite fascinating, really. Just the amount of detail in this photo, for example, the way you're getting the translucent backlighting in the grass and the lighting, just creates a believable miniature world. Some macro photography of some Velcro. Just using nature as an inspiration. Here are some crystals that have been magnified 2,000 times. This is a photograph of the Giant's Causeway. It's an area of about 40,000 basalt columns. I just find this complexity in nature really intriguing. Here's an interesting repetitive pattern in the erosion of these rocks. Kind of miniature landscapes. These are photos of ink mixed with paint and water to produce this interesting effect. Another one of acrylic paint close up. Almost looks like an alien landscape. I recently saw this experiment with acrylic paint by Jasmine Rock that looks like a miniature landscape. Great mixture of colours. So here's some more examples of my work, trying to replicate these sort of photography effect. So these examples use more traditional volumes and volume shaders, again using volume displacement, using textures to control the displacement and the scatter colour of the Arnold volume shader. Again, just trying to imitate nature, create these kind of alien looking miniature worlds. So I'm using HDR lighting to light the scene and realistic true depth of field. So there's also this tutorial I've created for rendering these sort of volumes using this volume displacement technique with Arnold in Maya. So you can check that out on the Autodesk website. So I want to show a few of the ideas and techniques I've discovered during my time working with Arnold. Here, for example, we have some next-gen renders that I'm probably most recognised for. It's basically 1 million instanced cubes that have been scaled and coloured with texture maps. And I like to think they mimic the sort of complexity found in nature. And more recently, instead of cubes, we have millions of instance spheres, again using XGen. These are recent examples of work that I used to test bubble rendering with Arnold. Again, just trying to increase the amount of complexity and go for a kind of macro photography feeling. These things were used to demonstrate the rendering of nested dielectric bubbles in Arnold, and were also used in the documentation and in tutorials for Arnold. More instance spheres, all rendered with ray trace subsurface scattering. Basically, I like creating these complex macro worlds, kind of mimic nature. This is a close-up render of a mandelbulb that I did for an Arnold tutorial. Basically millions of point spheres forming the mandelbulb shape, and just added some atmosphere volume just to add to the overall lighting. So I'd just like to talk about some of the more recent work I've been doing, especially with Bifrost Strands with Arnold. Some recent work I've been using to test Bifrost with. So these are millions of Bifrost strands rendered in Maya with Arnold. There's different colours and shapes. Combination of different noise fields to create these cool swirly patterns. Here are some strands using a braids compound. Thanks to Maxime Jean for that. Get a little complexity quite quickly and easily using Bifrost strands. Here we have the strands visible in Maya. There's the Bifrost graph. They've been scattered with a scatter points node and can be visualized in the viewport easily using the total proxy mode. Here's a close-up render of some of the braids. I like how organic this one feels. Here are some more Bifrost strand renders that are rendered at high resolution and animated the C value and then cropped into areas that I thought were more intriguing and kind of abstract, but also reflecting nature. Trying out different colour schemes and compositions. These floral looking images. And then using the toon shader, so trying out different styles, again just experimenting, different looks, iterating. Trying out various different Arnold colour correct shaders and so on. These were the initial tests I did. I really like the swells in these images. Again, using noise fields in Bifrost. This was recently used for the promotion of Arnold 7. And again, there's another tutorial that goes through this process that you can find on the Autodesk YouTube channel. So here we have some more strands renders, but using a head scan this time as the input mesh. It's based on a scan by a 3D scanning company called Triple Gangers. Lee Perry Smith was kind enough to let me have the original head scan. What I like about strands is that when you increase the number of strands to a high enough level, it almost looks like real geometry. So trying to model something like this would take a long time, but with strands you can create them, render them very quickly and easily. So just by adjusting the noise frequency and scale, you can get some really interesting results. And the great thing about generating these scenes procedurally is that you can get some surprisingly interesting results with very little effort. Someone said this one resembles Treebeard out of Lord of the Rings. Here I'm using an Arnold utility shader, which has different color modes to create the colors. And there's also a seed value with a lot of the Bifrost attributes that creates random values. And so I like to animate this value, leave it rendering overnight, and pick out the shapes that interest me the most. And this is one of the first early tests that I did. You can see it's not quite there. There aren't enough strands, and they're too uniformly distributed across the surface. But the scatter points node helps to fix this for the other renderers I've done. Normally I like to iterate and improve on a scene and see how much I can add to it. And this can help also with testing Arnold, as I can report back to the developers if I come across any hurdles or any issues and so on. So here we have the strands in Maya, which you can visualize in the viewport. So here's the Bifrost compound used to generate the strands, the scatter points node used to control the amount of strands. Again, experimenting with different noise types, different noise patterns, like the noise patterns in this one. Same with this one, there's a kind of line between something that looks like a person but also looks unnatural and kind of alien looking. So this render uses the Arnold Toon shader, which is a fun shader to play around with. It gives you a very illustrative style. I used a utility shader to give the colours. I also done a video tutorial, which is on our YouTube channel. So if you want to know more about how I created it, you can watch the video there. And here you can see the Toon shader with a color correct shader and a utility shader going into the color correct. The color mode set to barocentric coordinates. The shader mode has been set to flat, so it gives just pure color without any shading. Here's another similar series of renders using Bifrost strands. So a photographer that I admire called Joel Peter Witkin, and I think a lot of my work kind of reflects his work. His lighting and so on. This lighting I tried to... This lighting was inspired by the Dutch artist Rembrandt. So here's another example strand scene using Bifrost. You can see how the noise fields are used to control how the strands behave. And here I've applied the strands to some body objects. Different noise settings. Give different interesting results, quite dark results. Okay, so that's with strands. Let's move on to some other work I've been doing, which are called Refractive Portraits. So I often use photography as inspiration, and I saw a photo similar to this one, and I thought I'd try and reproduce it in 3D. So initially I created these sort of images using displacement, which give this sort of distorted glass appearance. I kind of enjoy distorting faces, you've probably noticed. Using procedural shaders to get this kind of look, initial tests. But then I started using texture maps of ink and paint to sort of get more interesting results like this. I found that connecting texture maps to the transmission index refraction gave me more interesting results than using displacement. So it gives a lot of mood and atmosphere quite easily. Kind of how I imagine people who are stuck in limbo look like. This one reminds me of some other work of Francis Bacon, his work I admire. I created a tutorial which is on the Arnold documentation site, and there's also a video tutorial on our YouTube channel. It covers how to recreate this technique. So here's a kind of breakdown of the scene. It's kind of like an optical illusion. You have a 3D head scan with a transparent plane in front of it. And then a texture map is projected through the transparent plane onto the head. And so with basic settings, you get something like this. Here are some of the examples, the texture maps that I use. So Jacob Green kindly gave me these photos of ink and oil mixtures, which look really, really cool. So yeah, I used those textures and I projected them through the plane, the transparent plane, onto the head. And we get this effect. So the illusion's broken when you move the camera away from this angle. When you look at it through the camera, you get this effect. When you exaggerate the index refraction, you get this kind of distorted breaking up effect that distorts the head behind the plane. It's quite simple, really, but you get some quite effective results. So I recreated this technique with Arnold 5 using the standard surface shader. At first I couldn't achieve it, and then I tried again later and I got something like this. So this is a head scan of the singer Kate Ackhurst from the band Kate Boy. She kindly let me use her head scan, and she was very pleased with the results, which was nice. You can see the head scan in Maya here, and the scene set up. And here's the Maya scene with the plane shader. So we've got the image, the oil and paint image, being camera projected through the plane. This is another technique that creates a lot of complexity very easily, using texture maps to control how the volume looks. So what you're looking at isn't actually traditional polygon geometry, but is in fact objects that have been converted to volumes and shaded using a volume shader. Volume shading typically used for smoke and fire effects. Here I've used it for head objects. Key to this technique, and with a lot of my work, is finding good texture maps to use with the effect. In this case, positioning and rotating the texture on the head gives a pleasing result, whereas some other textures don't work nearly as well. Again, trying to model this sort of complexity using traditional polymodeling techniques would take a very long time, whereas with volume displacement it's very easy to achieve. This technique is one of the most people ask me about how it's done. Even with the tutorials I've done, I think it's because it's just so tricky to find suitable textures that work well. Finding interesting textures is something I spend a lot of time doing. I think it shows in the work I do. I don't think this technique will look anywhere near as interesting without some decent source images. It's a little example. So we've got a head scan here, and then we add the smoke volume to it. They're both volumes at this point. Then we use volume displacement with the texture map to displace the volume. And then finally add some colour to the volume scatter colour to get something like this. So I have written a tutorial on how this is done in the Arnold documentation. And there's also a volume displacement tutorial on our YouTube channel. So this one is using the Emily head scan from the Digital Emily project, which you can download from this website here. And here's the scene setup, the head and the volume and the lighting. So in Arnold, to convert an object to a volume, you need to increase the volume step size and the padding so that you can render it as a volume. And here's an example of the volume shading that I've been using, projecting different textures and ramps to control how the how the volume appears using volume displacement. Okay, on to another technique. This is a glitch art technique. This is using the clip geo shader in Arnold, so it makes any shape a clipping shape. Clipping shape clips geometry from any shape that it intersects with. So here we've got the clip geo text intersecting a plane and it's clipping the plane. Here's a simple example of how it works with a sphere. The clipping geometry assigned to it, clipping in the cube. So typically, clip geo shader will be used to create cross sections of models. For example, here we have a cross section of a Lego car. And similar example with a cube connected to an animated camera with the clip geo shader assigned to the cube. Which gives you this cool cross-section effect. Here we have the clip geo shader assigned to a room, which is clipping in the head geometry. And here's a series of different clipping shapes used to clip the MLE model. Get some very weird results with it. So while I was playing around with this effect, I got something like this using a Ford GT40 classic car. And there was something I liked about this image. I knew there was some room for experimentation here. So I went back to the scene and started pushing the technique as much as I could to try and break it. So I basically used Mesh in Maya to distribute some car models with the clip geo shader assigned to it. And then I animated the seed value of the Mesh distribute node in Maya to randomly distribute the car models. And we get something like this. For a lot of complexity, quite quickly and easily. Someone told me that the person they sent this image to thought it had been corrupted, which I thought was quite funny. Yeah, so I just love the complexity of this technique, and a lot of what I aim for in general is that it generates very complex images that again would be difficult to model using traditional techniques. This is a 1965 Ford Mustang fastback. I feel the red and white gives it a nice graphic feel. Here we have a shoe model that also works well with this technique. You can get a very impressionistic style using this technique with the toon shader. Almost feels like an ad campaign or something. Again, it works well because there is a lot of internal geometry, like the car models. It gives the clip geo shader a lot to work with. Again, a lot of complexity can be achieved quite easily. Here we have it used with a robot model. Again, a lot of internal parts. And I've assigned the toon shader, the Arnold toon shader to it. This is basically the same technique with just used on one cube. So one cube has the toon shader, and I've instanced the same cube many times with the clip geo shader. So it's basically cutting into the same cube. Gives you this result. Here we have some different toon shader styles. You can see the Maya scene. I actually used Maya stand-ins to do this. Again, I animate the seed value to get multiple variations, which I can render out, and then just choose the ones I like the most. This uses a similar technique with the toon shader in combination with the clip geo shader. I originally tried this using regular shading, but the toon shader just transformed it into something much better. So this is the actual geometry that I used to cut into the head model. It's actually a model of the Apollo 11 command module that I instanced many times to clip the head geometry with. And if we zoom in a bit, you can see some of the mechanical parts. Again, animate the seed value to get different variations. Here we have a similar technique using the clip geo shader, but here I've animated the position of the heads to get this weird effect. Here you can see the head models instance with mashing wire. Quite an eerie feeling. Here's another technique using Arnold in combination with textures. So again, these sort of kind of paint and ink source images used to distort photographic images to create this kind of abstract effect. It's quite quick and cheap, easy effect. It's just a basic two-dimensional effect, so it doesn't take long to render. So it's really quick and easy to experiment with different images. This is really quite fun. I quite enjoyed this technique because it's a less technical project, more artistic, more just a quicker and freer way to create imagery. You can kind of see how the texture is distorting the photo, similar to the Refractive Portrait project, but just in 2D. Of course, you can animate the effect as well. So here we've got a texture map with the range values animated to kind of push the pixels through. So we're using a texture to remap the original photo on a range shader just to exaggerate that effect. And here's the written tutorial that goes through that process. So it's basically a standard surface shader assigned to a plane with a image texture and then a ramp connected to the UV coordinates of that image, and then a noise texture going into the ramp. So yeah, I think experimentation is key. Just mixing things up just to see what happens is kind of an approach that I take to my work. A lot of my ideas just fail, but every now and then something sticks, and it's those moments that make all the hard work worth it. I think the key is to just experiment and put yourself in a playful mood. Get inspiration from, like I say, photography and music can put you in that mood. Quite often the original ideas that I try to achieve, I don't get there, but being in this experimental, playful way of thinking, you kind of often find something good along the way. So that's the end of my presentation. I hope you liked it and got something out of it. If you want to keep track of what I'm doing, you can follow me on social media. For these links, and thanks for watching.